Uh, Avatar
We'll go
Meher
on
Baba Ki
mute.
Jai.
Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
The seven realities. The era of spiritual awakening that Meher Baba brings about gives no importance to creed, dogma, caste systems, and the performance of religious ceremonies and rites, but to the understanding of the following seven realities. The only real existence is that of one and only God, who is the self in every finite self. The only real love is the love for infinity, God, which arouses an intense longing to see, know, and become one with its truth, God. The only real sacrifice is that in which, in pursuance of this love, all things, body, mind, position, welfare, and even life itself, are sacrificed. The only real renunciation is that which abandons, even in the midst of worldly duties, all selfish thoughts and desires. The only real knowledge is the knowledge that God is the inner dweller in good people and so called bad, in saint and so called sinner. This knowledge requires you to help all equally as circumstances demand, without expectation of reward, and when compelled to take part in a dispute, to act without the slightest trace of enmity or hatred, or try to make others happy with brotherly or sisterly feelings for each one, to harm no one in thought, word, or deed, not even to those who harm you. The only real control is the discipline of senses from indulgence in low desires, which alone ensures absolute purity of character. The only real surrender is that in which the poise is undisturbed by any adverse circumstance, and the individual, amidst every kind of hardship, is resigned with perfect calm to the will of God. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Thank you. And let's move to the infinite intelligence. This is a page
So
that,
we stopped.
yeah,
Yeah, we
go
stopped at
ahead.
476 on the physical book, and we are starting from 470, page 477. We are reading the essay, which is at the back, which is the back matter of the book, and completing that essay before getting to series 2. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. The modalities of thinking. The beginning of thinking coincided with the production of first sanskara. Sanskara is limitation. Sanskara causes thinking to realize finitude. Thus, sanskara is the cause of false thinking. The distinction between real thinking and false thinking is at the root of all the different categorizations of thinking and mind that one finds in this work. And since sanskaras give rise to the problem of false thinking, the wiping out and annihilation of these sanskaras through one technique or another becomes the major task of the spiritual life. In its progress from its original unconscious state to its final state of self realization, thinking passes through a number of states or modalities. Throughout this book, describes and categorizes these in many ways. Yet on page 160 to 61, it does perhaps the clearest and most inclusive job, and schema expounded. There are there one finds in the master chart as well. According to this schema, thinking or mind or infinite intelligence has six aspects. In the beginning, thinking is unthinking, unconscious, asleep. Mind neither creates nor realizes this universe. In the second state, thinking as infinite mind of Ishvara creates and preserves and destroys the universe infinitely, but does not realize it. In third through fifth states, all belong to the domain of false thinking and are differentiated by the degree of consciousness which infinite intelligence has attained. In the third state, the most finite false mind thinks, that is, realizes the imagination most finitely, whereas in the fourth state, the less and less finite false mind thinks less and less finitely. Thus, Baba describes thinking as it progresses through the evolutionary series from the most finite stone or atom to the almost infinite, that is, monkey, the last form before the human. In the fifth state, which infinite intelligence experiences in human form, thinking thinks infinitely through the infinite false mind. But since infinite intelligence still thinks falsely, it realizes the universe rather than itself. But in the sixth state, infinite intelligence realizes itself as the infinite real mind. This is a state of God or self-realization, which is consummation and fulfillment of all thinking. Anybody wants to summarize this? I probably need to read this again one more time. Any comments so far?
I think reading again is a good idea. And if somebody wants to summarize before that, great.
I just have a question. So I think Mamaji can summarize, but or somebody else can summarize. But the question is that now, how do we correlate this with the God speaks, especially the seven stages? Here they are talking about God realization in sixth uh, stage. So from the final state, so it's a little confusing.
I think first of all we have to understand this, and then we can compare with God speaks.
Okay, then I think let's read.
Think the
Can, can we see the chart on page 60, 61, 160?
I don't know if I have that here. I don't think I have charts on this section.
Okay.
No, you don't have it. You don't have it. Yeah.
But what I could understand so far, Ashokji, God speaks is the journey of the soul, and this is the journey of the mind or thinking. So we probably need to wait and compare what's happening here.
Let's read it again.
Yeah, let's read this again. I'll start from the beginning. The beginning of thinking coincided with the production of the first sanskara. Sanskara is limitation. Sanskara causes thinking to realize finitude. Thus, sanskara is the cause of false thinking. The distinction between real thinking and false thinking is at the root of all the different categorizations of thinking and the mind that one finds in this work. And since sanskaras gave rise to the problem of false thinking, the wiping out and annihilation of these sanskaras through one technique or another becomes the major task of the spiritual life. Up to this point, I think it's clear. In its progress from its original unconscious state to its final state of self-realization, thinking passes through a number of states or modalities. Throughout this book describes and categorizes these in many ways. Yet on page 160-61, it does perhaps the clearest and most inclusive job. And the schema expounded there one finds in the master chart as well. According to this schema, thinking or mind or infinite intelligence has 6 aspects. In the beginning, thinking is unthinking, unconscious, asleep. Mind neither creates nor realizes the universe. In the second state, I guess in the first state, maybe it's a stone form or even.
No, it is the beyond state, I think.
Oh, is
Yeah,
that?
before the consciousness.
Yeah. Is the
Before the beyond, yeah.
In the beginning, thinking is unthinking, unconscious, asleep. Mind neither creates nor realizes the. Yeah, that's beyond. Thank you, Mamaji. In the second state, thinking is as the infinite mind of Ishwar creates and preserves and destroys the universe infinitely but does not realize it. In the second state, thinking as the infinite mind of Ishwar creates and preserves and destroys. Are these three states of God? The universe infinitely but does not realize it.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. It's the three states of God: creation, preservation, and destruction.
Okay. The third through fifth states all belong to the domain of false thinking and are differentiated by the degrees of consciousness which infinite intelligence has attained. In the third state, the most finite false mind thinks, that is, realizes the imagination. Most finitely, whereas in the fourth state, less and less finite false mind thinks less and less finitely. Thus, Baba describes thinking as it progresses through the evolutionary series from the most finite stone or atom to the almost infinite, that is, monkey from the last form before human. In the fifth state, which infinite intelligence experiences in human form, thinking thinks infinitely through the infinite false mind. But since infinite intelligence still thinks falsely, it realizes the universe rather than itself. But in the sixth state, infinite intelligence realizes itself as the infinite real mind. This is a state of God or self realization, which is consummation and fulfillment of all thinking. I think we have to look at the chart. It seems to be going in a circle.
Yeah,
No,
it's
no.
very simple, right? He gave a comprehensive, the whole journey from the beyond state God to in the initial state, God doesn't know that he's powerful and he's knowledgeable, he's blissful. And he comes to state two, beyond state of God. And then the consciousness and the sanskaras begin, and then he goes through evolution. And finally, he realizes who he is, consummate consciousness. That is where he realized who he is. He just summarized the whole the travel of a soul.
So third through fifth states are the evolution, is it?
No, this sixth state, what is mentioned here, we are trying to confuse that with the seven states of, say, involution. But the sixth state here mentioned is the whole process of involution, where it goes through all the aspects and then realizes finally. So here we need not confuse this with the states of God speaks as such. It is the evolutionary and reincarnation process which has gone through, and then at the final stage it is going to the involution. That is what is referred in the sixth state. But in the sixth state, infinite intelligence realizes itself as infinite real mind. That is the end of the cycle. This is the state of God or self-realization. This is the consummation and fulfillment of thinking, all thinking. So I think this is a summary of the whole process from beyond to realization.
Mamaji, this one more aspect I wanted to just highlight, and then that is that you see there are actually 14 steps to the journey. So evolution in 7 steps and involution in 7 steps. I mean, I'm just going what we have seen in the last 2 years. So the evolution from the stone to the human being, that's the highest form of the evolution as a human being, and thereafter we go to our journey towards God realization. So he has put in this one page, as I rightly said, the entire evolution and involution from stone to human being, and thereafter, as a human being, consciousness and the 7 stages where we reach God realization. So that there are basically 14 sort of steps or journeys. The first 7 being from stone to a human being, and thereafter from as a human being from 0 to 7 again towards God realization. Seventh being the ultimate, God or self realization is what I figure out. But ready for any if I'm to be corrected or misinterpreted.
Yeah, it is the same thing. Only thing is, it is the evolution of thinking process. So the
Correct.
actual who am I is the first question rising in the mind, and
Yes.
then the earlier thinking is almost nil. So in the process of say stone, metal, and other things. So as the progress of evolution happens, this thinking is slightly evolving, and the maximum thinking capability comes in the human evolutionary process. But
Correct.
whole through and through, this process of thinking is always false thinking. Only in the evolutionary process, this slightly deviates away from this false thinking towards the real thinking. And the actual real thinking, end of the real thinking is the God realization or self realization. Jai Baba.
Well
Sure.
summarized, Mama. I think I just had one analogy that came to mind. So I think what we are struggling with as we are reading this book is
Uh,
samskaras
Karthik,
are basically God speaks sanskaras and discourses sanskaras, which keep coming and saying, hey, how does this compare with this? How does this compare with this? This is the conditioning that we have. So I remind you, like it is said in the introduction, just suspend your learning, suspend your what you have learned, and with an open mind, just take in what is given in the book as is, and try to absorb it without use of what we have learned. So the words that they are using here, like thinking, infinite intelligence, have different connotations for the purpose of this book. Let's recognize that, and let's keep that in mind as we get into class every time, and as we read this book. It will be a lot more enjoyable. I'm struggling to do it myself, but I'm just reminding everybody. But that's the way that we'll enjoy this book.
Jai Baba. Let me go forward in that case. We'll probably discuss more at some point later, but let's keep reading for now. Originally, thinking does not think at all. In atom or stone form, thinking thinks most finitely and realizes the universe most finitely. In human form, thinking thinks infinitely and realizes the universe infinitely. Now, for the infinite intelligence as a human to realize itself, it must think infinitely and realize the universe virtually, not at all. In other words, it must combine the essence of human and stone. This is what a Sadguru does. When the infinite thinking characteristic of the human form, infinite intelligence, as Sadguru returns to the state in which the imagination, that is the universe, has become most finite, a single point as it was before thinking began. Thus, reuniting with the origin, Sadguru realizes self. Anybody wants to summarize this, or should I reread?
This is a new idea thrown up. The whole thinking process needs to shrink and then return to the point of almost the no thinking. That is realization. That's what is mentioned here. From the stone onwards, at the stone level, there is almost nil thinking. Only the question of who am I, and then the later few parts of it, probably. And then the Sadguru, having gone through all these things, returns back to this phase without thinking. That is, say, removing the wild thinking process to the nil point. That he refers to here as realization. So this is a new way of putting it across. The same essence.
Mamaji,
Jai
could
Baba.
you help me understand the line? It must, I think what is fourth line. It must think infinitely. Uh, Now, for infinite intelligence as human to realize itself, it must think infinitely and realize the universe virtually not at all. In other
Ah,
words, it must combine the essence of human and stone. Could you explain this line?
that's what at the stone point, there is the awareness with the only question of who am I.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
from there onwards, the route that every, say, soul takes is a false route. Thinking like this, I am so and so, I am seeing the sun, the moon, the cosmos, everything, and then it feels in a different way. That is thinking of the, say, non-existent or false. What I
Right.
mean by non-existence is nothing,
Right.
illusion.
Correct.
So it starts on thinking only on that. And after a point, as the human existence comes into the being, and it's a reincarnation is also almost completed, or in the final stages. So in the involutionary process, the thinking becomes different in the sense that it starts thinking what I am seeing, what I am feeling, what I am doing is all illusion, is all
Right.
false. So
Right.
this process of negating everything starts in the involutionary process and goes on to a point where thinking almost becomes nil, similar to a stage of stone form. That is what is
Right.
referred to here.
Thank you,
That's how
Mamaji.
I understood this.
Looks correct to me. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I'll tell what I was thinking is, if you think of infinite, whenever this infinite intelligence comes, that is nothing but God. And God doesn't have mind. So mind means sanskaras, right? So what we are is nothing but sanskaras. Because of the sanskaras, we think we have a body and we are in the illusion. Once, with the help of perfect master, when the all thinking is gone, how does the thinking goes? Because the sanskaras, all the artificial sanskaras are wiped out. Then the infinite intelligence comes in. See, this reminds me of Baba's statement, mind thinking fast is madman. Mind thinking is human being. Mind not thinking is God.
Yeah,
I'm sure you must have read that.
this is a very fine statement. Please repeat this.
Yeah. Mind thinking fast is madman. Mind thinking is human. Mind not thinking is God.
God.
But Baba put it in a very simple way. So so why do we think? Because of the sanskaras, we think. We have the mind. Mind is, there is no separate thing as a mind. It's all collection of the sanskaras. That's what we have to understand. Once in nirvana, when the perfect master wipes out all the sanskaras, then what we have the experience of the God. That is our original reality. And that's what Baba says is infinite intelligence. And that infinite intelligence thinks infinitely. And it realizes universe virtually, not at all. In other words, it must combine the essence of human and stone. So everything I am existence. As a stone, I am there. See, Baba, with the mandali, he is never idle. He always wants something going on. And there are people, there are mandali members or the outside people, they would come and enjoy Baba, looking at Baba and his features and all those things, keep their mind dull. And suddenly Baba would ask, what is God? And everybody was breaking their heads to answer. They explain in their own way. This is infinite, that, this, and all. And Baba answered. The correct answer is another question. What is not God? That is the correct answer. That's what Baba said. So Baba, God exists everywhere in everything. God is the only existence. But we can't see because our consciousness is focused on the sanskaras. That's our problem. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Raviji, thank you so much. Raviji, could you please put the first thing that you said, Baba explained, fast thinking mind is Batman. I like that. Could you put it on the group somewhere?
Let me find out exactly what Baba said, and I'll put exact words. And I'm probably paraphrasing.
Sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, okay.
Thank you. Thanks, Bamaji. Thanks, Raviji. Yeah.
Yeah, Jai Baba, just wanted to add something. So when the whim happens, the whim is basically who am I? And the answer is also known beforehand that I am God. Because when the whim happens, we know that simultaneously and spontaneously duality happens. Infinite consciousness which realizes itself, and infinite unconsciousness which wants to unite with infinite consciousness. So the infinite unconsciousness is going through all the evolutionary kingdoms, as we know. And we all know that the answer to the who am I question is I am God. But to reach that state, it has to go through all these different forms. Because the only way infinite unconsciousness can realize itself or unite with infinite consciousness is because it has to have full and complete consciousness in the human state. Because in all the different kingdoms before the human kingdom, consciousness is incomplete. It's only higher degrees of consciousness. So in the end, what is happening is in the human state, consciousness has become full and complete, but is covered by sanskaras, as Ravi was saying, correct? Now, what we are doing is reincarnation, we are spending these sanskaras, and in involution, we are unwinding sanskaras. So basically, we have to remove the residue of sanskaras to go back to our original self. So the whole idea is that there is only accumulation of sanskaras, then dissolving the sanskaras to find your real self. So in this process, we have all this action of thoughts, words, and deeds, which we all know about, which create weak impressions, strong impressions, and powerful impressions. So when you read this aspect of thinking in this paragraph in Infinite Intelligence, it says originally thinking does not think at all. Now that is a very, I mean, we can try to, interpret that in many different ways, but I'm not going to go into it. And then it says in atom or stone form, thinking thinks most finitely and realizes the universe most finitely. First of all, I'm not in atom or stone form. We have to just accept it the way it is. But at least in the human form, thinking thinks infinitely and realizes the universe infinitely. So here, at least being in human form, we can understand that our thinking imagination can be infinite. And it says now for infinite intelligence as a human to realize itself. Now, instead of infinite intelligence, if you write God as a human, because that is what is said in God Speaks, God in man state. When we are reading God Speaks here, Baba uses infinite intelligence as a human to realize itself. It must think and realize the universe virtually, not at all. So the wordings are very, it's not easy, at least for me to understand. So that was my point anyway. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Kama, I liked the part where you explained thoughts, words, and deeds create sanskaras and this whole journey. So that's the relation with God Speaks. I think we are focusing on thinking and thoughts right now in this book, intelligence, thoughts, mind. And those are the ones that create sanskaras, and the whole journey is about unwinding all those sanskaras. So that stayed with me. Thank you. Thinking's journey. God Speaks provides the masterful and authoritative exposition on the fundamental narrative in Meher Baba's explanation of creation. That is the story of the soul's journey from the original oceanic unconsciousness to its eventual immersion in the ocean of conscious self-realization. In God Speaks, Baba characterizes this journey in terms of three fundamental movements: evolution, in which the drop soul, gathering the impressions of experience, passes through the seven kingdoms in the course of acquiring full consciousness; reincarnation, in which the drop soul, spending all impressions while gathering new ones, keeps passing through the cycle of birth and death and rebirth in human form; and involution, in which the drop soul, divesting itself of impressions, ascends through the six planes of subtle mental worlds towards the eventual union with God on the seventh plane. The narrative of soul's journey is not as central to the subject matter of infinite intelligence as it is to God Speaks, and the terminology which infinite intelligence uses for the soul's journey differs somewhat from which Meher Baba uses in later years. Nonetheless, many passages and sections in Infinite Intelligence Review, the gradual growth of consciousness through the 8,400,000, is it 8,400,000 species of evolution, and the subsequent processes by which sanskaras were wiped out during the progress of the human consciousness through the inner worlds. The words evolution and reincarnation appear infrequently in the intelligence notebooks. But since no special problem or inconsistency arises in their usage, the editors have inserted these terms fairly regularly for the purpose of clarification. The word involution, however, refers in infinite intelligence not to the inward journey through the spiritual planes, as in discourses and God Speaks, but rather to the reabsorption of the subtle and gross bodies into the fine form when the individual falls asleep, or reabsorption of the subtle and gross universes at the time of Mahapralaya. On this point, the editors have followed the usage of the original manuscript, so readers should remember that involution does not strictly carry the same meaning here as in Meher Baba's other writings. As to the question of who makes this journey, the phrases soul or drop soul, commonly employed in God Speaks, rarely appear in Infinite Intelligence. Most often, the text refers to the individuality making the journey as infinite intelligence, or the thinking, or the mind. At many points, however, Meher Baba employs the Sanskrit derived word jiv, which means something like the individual mind and the subtle body, and the vital spirit that passes through the succession of gross forms. The companion term to this jiv is Shiv, which means the realized individuality, the divine person. Jiv and Shiv correlate with other pair of companions in terms of Banda, the bound one or slave, and Khuda, the Lord or the Master. Since the intelligence as Jeev is bound and limited, one could characterize Jeev as the Banda. Since Shiv is free, one could describe him as the master free from bondage. As the text explains many times, the journey of the Jeev culminates in that moment of self-realization when Jeev becomes Shiv and the Banda becomes Khuda. Another word often used in reference to the progress of thinking through evolution, reincarnation, and the inward journey is Chaitanya. Cognate with the Chit and Chitta, the understanding or intellect, or divine knowledge, Chaitanya, is broadly speaking a kind of thinking or consciousness. But what kind? Infinite intelligence, though it often employs the word, does not explicitly define it. But an article attributed to Meher Baba in a 1930 issue of the Meher Message explains that whereas in stone, Chaitanya is virtually non existent, in the higher forms of evolution it manifests as instinct. In human form, it becomes reason. In spiritually advanced persons, it appears as inspiration. And in perfect ones, where Chaitanya merges with Atma, it merges with consciousness of self. As in the very beginning, so in the very end, consciousness and Chaitanya are one. But in the intermediary stages, they are distinctly apart, presented as they are in two different aspects. Until sanskaras are wiped out, Chaitanya uses consciousness in the experiencing sanskaras. When they are wiped out, real consciousness is attained and Chaitanya realizes Atma infinitely. Thus, we see that Atma, that is reality, is at the back of Trinity, Chaitanya, consciousness, and the body. Jai Baba. So, there's a lot in these few paras. Anybody wants to comment or summarize? Or shall I reread?
So I think it's very clear, right? In simple terms, it's all. Nothing I see no complication. It may be hard for me to summarize, but as I read, I don't see any difficulty, as I understand.
Raviji, you are elevated soul. Not everybody is.
I still drink.
Seriously, I think reread might be a good idea, if you don't mind.
Ashokji and I are on lower planes. Please keep
No.
in mind.
We're all in the kindergarten. We're all trying to understand. That's all.
Yes.
Jai Baba, I find some inconsistencies in the terminologies used here. Here he says 8.4 million species, but we know that it's 8.4 million human cycles. It's 50 crores of species. Okay, that is one thing. And then he says Chaitanya uses consciousness. Actually, Chaitanya means consciousness. Chaitanya means conscious. Chaitanya means consciousness. Maha Chaitanya means super consciousness. I don't know who wrote this. I got a problem with that because it's difficult.
I think Ward Parks, wrote this, right? I don't know what this document at all.
So the problem is there is nobody to edit this explanation.
No. So I think I've seen problems like this. Yeah, the editors, including Ward Parks, I don't know who else is part of the team, have always struggled with the right meanings of Indic words, Sanskrit words, and it's really tragic because I think we should draw attention to the team about this, to the broader trust as well, because this is glaring. For example, consciousness. Anyway, so again, don't cloud yourself by what you understand, and bear in mind that there could be poor interpretation or wrong interpretation of Indic terms. Like this one was a classic example.
Chaitanya.
Chaitanya is consciousness. That's what I understand. But Ward Parks is well read. Everything he chooses a word, he does a lot of research. He has been doing last how many years? 35 years on these 3 books: Infinite Intelligence, Tiffin Lectures, and The Creation and Its Causes. By the way, that is released. The book is released.
The Creation and Its Causes.
Let me tell you something. I think as Karthik pointed out, the problem with the Westerners is that they think they know Sanskrit words better than us, or the way they interpret. I have seen Ward, when he's giving explanations, especially when it comes to Sanskrit terms, he has no clue.
Yes,
Because he's basically,
even on the
somebody-
videos I've seen inconsistencies where he's talking. So it's I mean, some of the terms he understands well, some of them he probably didn't understand well at the time of writing this book, because I've noticed it surely. And he himself acknowledges that. He says, hey, I'm not sure, it may be this meaning kind of thing, but it's so off, it's surprising.
But he wants, see, we all can say, I think this is what it is, but he wants authoritative confirmation of all these Sanskrit words and the actual meaning. And there are people who are real experts in that, but the only way is to find a dictionary, Sanskrit English dictionary, and who is thorough with the Sanskrit. Only they can explain. But anyway, let us try to get whatever it is instead of finding, what is wrong here. Let us try to get whatever it is here.
Absolutely. Ashokji, your request remains.
Absolutely. So do you want to reread or you want to continue?
Ashokji, your call.
I wanted to hear it
Reread.
because
I mean, what is that you don't understand? We don't understand. That's the question we have to.
No. My request is because I had a power outage and I did not hear major part of it.
Ashokji, Baba came to your rescue.
Yeah. At least I have some savior. Yes.
Mamaji, is it still raining in Bangalore?
Off and on.
Okay.
But last 2 days, I think it is slightly less.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let me start again from where I started the last para. This narrative of the soul's journey is not as central to the subject matter of infinite intelligence as it is to the God speaks. And the terminology which infinite intelligence uses for the soul's journey differs somewhat from which Meher Baba used in later years. Nonetheless, many passages and sections in Infinite Intelligence review the gradual growth of consciousness through the 8,400,000 species of evolution and the subsequent processes by which sanskaras are wiped out during the progress.
Regarding this, Kama gave a comment.
Yes.
I feel there are two interpretations. One in the Indian philosophy also, they refer to this 8,400,000 species. And
84 lakhs in Padma Purana.
That's why we will have to keep our say comments with some respect. So what is the actual 84 lakh births in the human form? If we think that is the only requirement, then what is the need for all these species? Why we jump from species to species? So there may be importance, and these numbers do not make much sense. Actually, we go through this process of changing from one species to other as we say our sanskaras and then our requirement of imagination makes us imagine new things, and then we get a new form where this is satisfied and we get new imagination, and then with that we get a new form, and then that is experience there. That is the process of this sanskara. Anyway, these species are also important, and then the process of reincarnation in human form is also very important. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Where did I stop? 8,400,000 species of evolution and the subsequent processes by which sanskaras are wiped out during the progress of human consciousness through the inner worlds. The words evolution and reincarnation appear infrequently in the intelligence notebooks, but since no special problem or inconsistency arises in their usage, the editors have inserted these terms fairly regularly for the purpose of clarification. The word involution, however, refers in infinite intelligence not to the inward journey through the spiritual planes, as in discourses and God speaks, but rather the absorption of the subtle and gross bodies into the fine form when the individual falls asleep, or reabsorption of the subtle and gross universes at the time of Mahapralaya. On this point, the editors have followed the usage of original manuscripts, so readers should remember that involution does not strictly carry the same meaning here as in Meher Baba's other writings. As to the question of who makes this journey, the phrases soul or the drop soul commonly employed in God Speaks rarely appear in Infinite Intelligence. Most often, the text refers to the individuality making the journey as infinite intelligence, or the thinking, or the mind. At many points, however, Meher Baba employs the Sanskrit-derived word jeev, which means something like individual mind and subtle body, the vital spirit that passes through the succession of gross forms. The companion term to jeev is Shiv, which means realized individuality, the divine person. Jeev and Shiv correlate with another pair of companion terms, Banda, the bound one, or slave, and Khuda, the Lord or the Master. Since the intelligence as Jeev is bound and limited, one could characterize Jeev as the Banda. Since Shiv is free, one could describe him as a master free from bondage. As the text explains many times, the journey of the Jeev culminates in the moment of self-realization when Jeev becomes Shiv and the Banda becomes Khuda. Another word often used in the reference to the progress of thinking through evolution, reincarnation, and the inward journey is Chaitanya. Cognate with Chit and Chitta, the understanding or intellect or divine knowledge. Chaitanya is, broadly speaking, a kind of thinking or consciousness. But what kind? Infinite intelligence, though it often employs the word, does not explicitly define it. But an article attributed to Meher Baba in a 1930 issue of Meher Message explains that whereas in stone Chaitanya is virtually non-existent, in the higher forms of evolution it manifests as instinct, in human form it becomes reason, in spiritually advanced person it appears as inspiration, and in perfect ones, where Chaitanya merges with Atma, it merges with consciousness of the self. As in the very beginning, so in the very end, consciousness and Chaitanya are one. But in the intermediary stages, they are distinctly apart, presented as they are in two different aspects. Until sanskaras are wiped out, Chaitanya uses consciousness in experiencing sanskaras. When they are wiped out, the real consciousness is attained and Chaitanya realizes Atma's infinity. Thus, we see that Atma, that is reality, is at the back of the Trinity, Chaitanya, consciousness, and the body. I go forward. The subtle relationship between Chaitanya and consciousness, thinking, in infinite intelligence, one might explain like this: consciousness or the thinking is inherent to the soul, a fundamental attribute within its very nature. It is the soul, the Atma, the intelligence, individualized as the drop that actually experiences and realizes all that is experienced and realized. The mind, by contrast, experiences nothing. The Atma merely uses it as an instrument or repository for gatherings and spendings of sanskaras that are a result of past and the cause of future experience. The mind, in any given state of development, as illuminated by the thinking of the infinite intelligence or consciousness of the soul, might be characterized as the Jeev. And that illumination could be called the Chaitanya. Chaitanya, in other words, is not the pure light itself, but rather the illumination that is produced when the light through the medium of a specific mind falls on a certain scene. One could liken Chaitanya to the glow that a flashlight produces, a glow proceeding from an illuminating source and bringing a circle of objects into visibility. Chaitanya might best be translated as awareness, a concept that is built on and presupposes consciousness, but that encompasses within an orb a surrounding environment of things that this awareness is aware of. Anybody wants to comment on Chaitanya before I go forward? Kama, is this correct? Raviji, any comments?
Sorry, what is the question?
My question is Chaitanya. Kama just now mentioned the explanation was not correct, but he has further explained in more.
Chaitanya is consciousness. We have an idea what is consciousness is. That is the Chaitanya.
Okay.
Here it's kind of little confused how they wrote this here.
You mean it's confused? Where's the confusion?
Here, they wrote here, one could liken Chaitanya to the glow that a flashlight produces, a glow proceeding from an illuminating source and bringing a circle of objects into visibility. Chaitanya might best be translated as awareness, a concept that is built on the presupposes consciousness, but then encompasses within its orb a surrounding environment of things that this awareness is aware of. I mean, consciousness is, it's very hard for us to understand what is my consciousness. So they wrote, whoever wrote this, they wrote all these explanations.
Yeah. This flashlight concept, what they have brought here, also throws another aspect because when you hold a flashlight and project it, it shows you only a small circle, but not the whole of the thing. So that is our illusory mind. So we are able to see our experience in the falseness, not reality. Reality means the whole gamut is we are becoming that, or we are able to be in the glow totally. Whereas when a flashlight, when our thinking creates some, say, idea in our mind, it is restricted into the illusion around which we are living. That is what is purported here. I probably think the authors are trying to drive that point here.
I remember the flashlight concept was in God Speaks also, right? Or was it in Discourses?
I think in Discourses. Our consciousness is focused on the sanskaras.
Yes.
Instead of realizing what the consciousness is, that is God realization. Once the consciousness becomes fully evolved in the human being, because it has accumulated all the sanskaras over the evolution period, so it is stuck within the sanskaras.
Yeah.
That's what we have to start unwinding it.
Right. Okay, let me just read the footnote as well. On the page 32-34, the term inspiration is used somewhat differently. For while animals experience instinct and human reasons, inspiration is reserved for the Satpurushas. Also, there's another footnote. See Meher Baba Consciousness in Chaitanya, Meher Volume 2, number 8, August 1930, page 23. The most relevant passages appear in Appendix 6, page 609. Let me go forward, then we can get back if there's anything. Several passages seem to imply an association between Chaitanya and life. Chaitanya effectively comes to birth when thinking becomes animate and living. Before this stage, Chaitanya is virtually, though not absolutely, non-existent in the stone or metal states. As it realizes the universe more and more fully through the progressive evolution of the form or medium, Chaitanya becomes less and less finite. This happens through the gathering of experience, whose impressional residue remains with the individual mind or thinking in the form of sanskaras. Since these sanskaras play a natural and necessary role through the course of evolution in the deployment of consciousness and form, Baba calls them natural sanskaras. But after thinking or consciousness has become infinite in the perfectly evolved human form, they no longer serve this earlier beneficial purpose, but instead stand as an obstacle to infinite intelligence in its onward journey, which now in human form occupies itself solely with the getting rid of this sanskaric legacy. The sanskaras that the human form acquires while spending old sanskaras, therefore, are unnatural sanskaras, since they no longer advance the natural and necessary purpose of gaining full consciousness, this purpose having already been achieved. In this sense, these new sanskaras are unnecessary and unnatural. Thinking, though now infinite, is false, enslaved by the unpana or I-ness or I consciousness that these sanskaras give rise to. What needs to happen at this stage is the wiping out of sanskaras, the disappearance of falseness, the vanishing of unpana, leaving behind pure thinking or consciousness. When this occurs, the false Chaitanya can become the real Chaitanya, and this completes the journey. The legacy of impressions, sanskaras, is the fundamental problem that intelligence in human form faces. The sum total of impressions creates in the subtle body a new form of mold, roop. The gross body is shaped after this form. In the subtle body, sanskaras are desires in the subtle world. When they descend into the gross sphere, these desires get translated into actions. When the mind enjoys or suffers in the course of spending in its sanskaras, through desire or action, these new sanskaras are created. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Interruption. When the mind enjoys or suffers in the course of spending its sanskaras, is the screen still visible?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
When the mind enjoys or suffers in the course of spending its sanskaras, through desire or action, new sanskaras are created, which attach to the mind. These new sanskaras, persisting after the physical body's death, constitute the basis for the new subtle root from which descends a new gross body. Thus, the mind gets ensnared in the cycle of birth and death from which it cannot escape. Nonetheless, all these changes take place with respect to the bodies only. The soul, the Atma, the infinite intelligence itself is unaffected. Eventually, as described later, the infinite mind in human form embarks on the path to self-realization. This self-realization can occur only if the mind's sanskaras have been annihilated. The annihilation of sanskaras is brought about through the different paths or yogas laid down by the spiritually perfect divine masters. The description of these four paths in Series 11 represents probably the high point of infinite intelligence. It culminates the book's treatment of the soul's journey and provides the most detailed account of the annihilation of sanskaras anywhere in Baba's writings. In Series 11 means in the same book. Anybody knows?
Yes. This series means different chapters are.
Yeah,
That is what we
Correct.
understand. Yes.
Okay, look forward to that. This should be very important for us. Anybody, any comments before I go further? No? Okay. The role of Ishwar in the creation and realization of the universe. Before we explore the return journey to self-realization undertaken in the human form, more needs to be said about the role that Ishwar plays in the larger creation realization process. As noted earlier, Ishwar, who corresponds to the third of the 10 states of God described in God's speech, is the creator, preserver, destroyer of the universe, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, all in one. These triple functions correlate to the stages in the process of breathing. Creation is like breathing out, preservation is like pause after breathing out, and destruction is like breathing in. Then again, one could compare the cycle of Ishwar to the functioning of the eye. Creation is like opening of the eye, preservation is like remaining open of the eye, and destruction is like closing of the eye. Himself, altogether formless, Nirakar, and free, Ishwar is nonetheless all-knowing and all-powerful with respect to the world of form. Yet, and here lies the great irony, Ishwar, in his absorption with the universe, remains ignorant of himself as Paramatma or God the reality. The phrase infinite thinking is one of the text's regular designations for this Ishwar state, as Ishwar, infinite intelligence, creates without realizing, imagines without becoming, entirely free from the bondage experienced by the slave or bandha. Ishwar, in full consciousness, performs his triple duty of creating, preserving, destroying with respect to the universe, without any way becoming entangled in it. Can I continue?
Yep, yep.
If Ishwar is pure thinking, unsullied by actual immersion in ignorance of Maya, then what is the actual point of contact between Ishwar and the realized universe, or the world of actuality as ordinary people experience it? The last section of Series 9 provides the key treatment of this topic, the topic not dealt with elsewhere in Meher Baba's writings. After Ishwar as Brahma has created the universe and Ishwar as Vishnu has preserved it, the interlude between Ishwar as Mahesh destroys the universe. Intelligence, as the realizer or the individual thinking, undertakes to realize it, or more accurately, to realizing the finite portion of the imagination or universe that corresponds to the form of that thinking and ambit of its experience. To say then that intelligence creates, preserves, and destroys the universe is to describe only its function as Ishwar. If the actualization of experience figures into accounting, then we should say that intelligence creates, preserves, realizes is in bold, and destroys the universe. Turning again to the analogy set forth in previous paragraph, we could liken realization to the universe to actual seeing that transpires when the eye is open, or the smelling one engages in through the course of breathing. Realization intervenes, one might say, through the work of Vishnu, that is, intelligence as an individual thinking realizes what intelligence as Vishnu has preserved. The fact that in Vaishnavite tradition, the avatar is represented as the descent of Vishnu into human form perhaps reflects an awareness within Hinduism of this unique role which Vishnu plays in course of the preservation and realization of the universe. Perhaps the most important discussion of Ishwar in infinite intelligence, however, occurs in the middle sections of Series 10. The analogy of Jamshed's eye, page 185 to 207, especially 201 to 7, describes in detail how, when Jamshed opens his eye, this act projects forth an image or shadow, which then he sees in the mirror. Here, the projection of the image corresponds to creation, the intelligence as Ishwar. The seeing corresponds to the realizing and experiencing by intelligence as realizer, and the mirror itself corresponds to the cross form.
Can you read that paragraph once again?
Okay, let me start from.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Perhaps the most important discussion of Ishwar in infinite intelligence, however, occurs in the middle section of Series 10. The analogy of Jamshed's eye describes in detail how, when Jamshed opens his eye, the act projects the image or shadow, which then he sees in the mirror. When the projection of the image corresponds to the creation by intelligence as Ishwar, the seeing corresponds to the realizing and experiencing by intelligence as realizer, and the mirror itself corresponds to the gross form.
Okay. Needs
Anybody?
to understand.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Because
Mirror
the
is gross.
last line, mirror itself
Yeah.
corresponds to the gross form. Is the first time I am hearing this, or giving me a new thought. So all that experiencing happens in the gross form or in our body. So there is a need for the body to experience also.
Hmm. So all the impression, the mirror is like an image, maybe a mirage or something that's not real, and the mirror is carrying it. Maybe that's the body. That's why
Yes,
it's cross form. Anybody has better explanation?
Body is needed, right? Right from the
yes,
beginning.
yes, yes.
Who am I is the, if we think that is the first sanskara, and simultaneously the consciousness came about. And then consciousness wants to experience that sanskara. It has to have a medium. So it has got a body of gas. 256 gases that are not even present on earth. Baba said in Nothing and Everything, Bhava culture is nothing and everything, that they are present in other planets. The only the lowest gas that we can recognize is the hydrogen. Before that, there are 256 more gaseous states. But Baba did not explain about that. Is it makes our life more complicated. It is beyond our mind's conception. So why do we care? Once we get God realization, we will know all those details. Uh,
Thank you. Keep the hope alive. Keep the
yeah.
target in mind.
Yes, 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 yes.
Thank you. I go forward then. But even more striking is a description of the following pages, page 207 to 17, of the triune function of Ishwar through the cycle of sleep, dream, and awakening. From sound sleep, infinite intelligence as Ishwar in his creator Brahma aspect projects the fine imagination and fine thinking into the subtle form. This subtle manifestation of fine imagination and thinking, Ishwar preserves in his aspect as Vishnu and infinite intelligence as the realizer, or the individual thinking realizes what is infinite intelligence as Vishnu has preserved. This realization of the subtle is what in common parlance we would call a dream. If Ishwar as Mahesh then dissolves this subtle manifestation, the dreamer falls back into sound sleep. But if the descent continues, then Ishwar as Brahma creates or projects the subtle imagination and thinking as cross imagination and thinking. This cross manifestation of the subtle Ishwar now preserves in his Vishnu aspect, and when intelligence as a realizer realizes this cross thinking and imagination, then we say in common parlance that the person is awake. Here, the downward movement has reached its terminus. The ascent begins when Ishwar as Mahesh dissolves the gross imagination and thinking into their subtle forms, which again are preserved by Ishwar as Vishnu and realized by intelligence as realizer. When this happens, we say that the person has fallen asleep and begun to dream. And when the dreamer returns to the sound sleep, the subtle imagination and thinking revert to their fine form. With this return to the original state, one cycle is complete. This cyclic movement of the descent and ascent from sound sleep through dream to wakefulness and back again, a movement made possible by the activity of Ishvara as creator, preserver, destroyer, and the realizations of intelligence as realizer or experiencer occurs at every level of evolution from stone through human form. Thus, God as Ishvara is profoundly and intimately involved at every moment in the experience of every sentient and insentient being in the universe. Any comments, any questions so far? Looks like none. Everybody understood. The four yogas.
Sorry.
Yeah,
No,
please.
before this, I think in this cycle, there is some sort of a. In this cycle, there is a importance given to the preservation. So each cycle we sort of experience sanskaras and then either get rid of that if we are on the realization path, or add on to new sanskaras. That is the importance of each cycle. So we have to concentrate on that preservation part of Vishnu's activity, because this actual process goes on. That is
Right.
the beginning, the thinking process while we are living here, and then the destruction that keeps on going. But the importance is what we preserve or what we get rid of is the most important thing. That is the Vishnu aspect of the triune here. Jai Baba.
Sorry, I had an interruption. So,
Yes.
okay. So can I go forward now?
Yes.
The four yoga. The four yogas. The process of falling asleep, which, as we have seen, results from the activity of Ishwar as Mahesh, transpires not only in the daily cycle of sleep to dream to wakefulness to dream to sleep. I repeat again, the process of falling asleep, which, as we have seen, results from the activity of Ishwar as Mahesh, transpires not only in the daily cycle of sleep to dream to wakefulness to dream to sleep. It also figures into the larger journey of the drop soul or Jivatma through evolution, reincarnation, and involution to God realization. In this process, the original descent of infinite intelligence from its original unconsciousness to its infinite awareness of the gross sphere, the unnatural light in human form is like descent from sleep to wakefulness. When the infinite intelligence has attained human form, the role which Mahesh performs in dissolving this gross consciousness into subtle consciousness and the subtle consciousness into self-consciousness recapitulates on a larger scale what happens each night to the ordinary man when Mahesh dissolves his gross awareness into subtle dreaming and subtle dreaming into sound sleep. The key difference between falling asleep at night and returning to self consciousness, however, is that in the latter case, one retains full consciousness. Thus, when Mahesh dissolves the gross awareness of the spiritual pilgrim entering the spiritual path, he experiences the divine dream, Turyavastha, of the subtle world in a state of full wakefulness. And when Mahesh in turn dissolves this divine dream, this pilgrim experiences wakefulness in the midst of sound sleep or self realization. One accomplishes this return journey to self realization through the paths laid down by perfect ones. Infinite intelligence refers to these paths as yogas, and the persons treading them, in other words, spiritually advanced souls, are called yogis. In later years, Meher Baba generally discouraged his followers from practice of yoga, since the disciplines and practices of concentration that yogis employ are unnecessary and would have constituted a distraction to those under his guidance. But in earlier texts, Baba used word yoga not in a more limited sense as in Patanjali Yoga or Hatha Yoga, but as a general designation for inner path. In the later series of in the later part of series 11, Baba examines four of these yogas: Karma, Dhyan, Bhakti, Raj. This particular angle from which he looks at them highlights how each of these yogas bring about the annihilation of sanskaras. As discussed earlier, sanskaras prevent infinite intelligence in human form from realizing it. Their elimination is the primary task confronting the yogi, spiritually advanced pilgrim, and this section of infinite intelligence provides the most detailed account of the mechanisms involved found anywhere in Meher Baba's teachings. In Karma Yoga, the yoga of action, one performs actions as duty without any attachment to its result. Since the mind takes no enjoyment, upabhog, in the actions it performs, the spending of past sanskaras through action does not produce new sanskaras, for the enjoyment or suffering that attends the spending of sanskaras is a factor in experience that creates new sanskaras. The Karma Yogi, Baba explains, is like an actor in a theatrical company or who remains detached from the role he plays, experiencing neither happiness nor sorrow in the course of playing his part. He is given no further parts and makes his exit from the company. Anybody wants to explain how you can be doing worldly things without upabhog?
Yeah. That is the whole crux of all the spiritual journey.
Right.
How to do karma without
Attachment.
requirement of upabhog. Actually, we don't even think it is upabhog. We think we do for bhog.
What is bhog and what is upabhog?
That is the
Sorry.
enjoyment out of the action.
Right.
So that is should be a secondary part, and you should not even think of that secondary part in doing a action. That is the actual spiritual action. So that is what is intelligent action or selfless action.
Selfless action.
Yes.
But it looks practically impossible, right?
Yes, looks practically impossible, but still achievable. Let's say there are gradations. Say when we do any action only for our own sake, and
Right.
then at the expense of others. So each word is a stage here. We do action only for our own self
Mm-hmm.
at the expense of others' enjoyment or at the cost of others' pain, then
Mm-hmm.
it is not at all spiritual. If you do
Yeah.
your action only for you,
Mm-hmm.
without disturbing others, without causing pain to others, that is one step ahead. Next is you need to do action because that is the way of life, but don't think of your own self all the time. So do the action, then take whatever comes as prasad.
Mm-hmm.
Don't think that as your achievement. So that is the way we have to progress. So, but every action will have some spin-off. And if you think of the spin-off alone, then your action is not, say, what Krishna says, without, say, do your action, don't think of the outcome. That's what he says. That is very difficult to do, but that is the progress we have to start doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, we need to surrender all our actions to Him and be in love with Him. That's the way. Actually, we have to have some passion to do a thing, right? In our worldly office or something, we need to achieve results. So Baba says, you do your best. That question, if you really ask in heart of heart, many times that is missing actually. So neither we do our best in achieving things, and we still need results. And that is the cycle we are in actually, which keeps us disturbed. So one thing is, first, are we putting our best to achieve a result? And then once we have done this, we leave the results to Him, what Gita says, and be happy about it, because all the results are as per His wish. So that's that's the whole thing, I think. And for that, we need a lot of love and surrenderance to Baba.
Yeah.
So that we need to develop.
See,
Constant
another
remembrance.
point,
Yeah.
Another point is, once we have done some work and we are satisfied with that, we are not evolving. We are stuck wherever we are. Whereas if we give the result to the God, that means we are not owning it. And then we can analyze ourselves. How did we do this process? Any particular process, any particular action. The result, you can observe it. You have to observe it because you have to evaluate yourself. And if the result matches with the goal, then you are okay with you offer that to God. If the result does not match the goal with which you started, that means you need to improve on that. So
Correct.
this is a process of getting perfection. So that's why Baba said, do your best and leave the rest to me. That's exactly what Baba said. And the whole Bhagavad Gita, the classic sloka is there, karmanya vadikaraste, ma phalesu kadachana, ma karma phalaheturbur, mate sangasva karmani. And this idea is repeated number of times in Bhagavad Gita, actually. Actually, if we read Bhagavad Gita, that helps us to understand Baba's philosophy much better.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why this word upabhog is quite important. Say all our actions are, say in any of the scientific analysis, they say your action should be oriented to the results. There are two aspects in the result. One is what is the benefit that I get out of this? That aspect is the upabhog. But goal is different. If we are in a team, the goal will be achieving a success of the process. But what I get out of this is the other aspect. I think as a single individual in the group. So that is upabhog. So we have to match this. So if you are driven by the upabhog all the time, so the goal may not be achieved, or your participation will always not be the wholesome participation. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Thank you. Thanks for dwelling deeper into this. I think I need to think more. I somehow was not completely, can't understand completely how to not do upabhog while doing worldly actions. That's the question. I think nobody has a perfect answer, but we can try. Yeah. Surrender to Baba, Sanjay ji said, but surrender is also sometimes we do everything and then say, okay, Baba is yours. Bad things also yours, good things also yours. But actually, we are still doing the upabhog. That probably is not the real surrender. Probably need to understand real meaning of surrender as well. Okay, never mind. Let's go forward. We have to keep trying. Yeah. The mechanism for the destruction of sanskaras in Dhyana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, is distinctive, and the first at the first glance peculiar. The basic method of Dhyana Yoga involves inaction. Through the exercise of the discriminative faculty, the Dhyan Yogi denies to his sanskaras the opportunity to express themselves in action, and so he never experiences them. Then how can he eliminate them? As Baba explains, through the Dhyan Yoga, though the Dhyan Yogi does not spend these sanskaras, the very process of not acting creates ulat or reverse impressions. These ulat sanskaras kill the ordinary sulat or obverse impressions, just as ordinary sulat sanskaras created through the course of experience remain after the experience comes to an end. So the ulat sanskaras created through the non-experiencing of the old sulat sanskaras persist after those sulat sanskaras have been wiped out. I repeat this section again. The mechanism for the destruction of sanskaras in Dhyana Yoga, the yoga of knowledge, is distinctive and at first glance peculiar. The basic method of Dhyana Yoga involves inaction. Through the exercise of the discriminative faculty, the Dhyana Yogi denies to his sanskaras the opportunity to express themselves in the action, and so he never experiences them. Then how can he eliminate them? As Baba explains, though the Dhyan Yogi does not spend these sanskaras, the very process of not acting creates ulat or reverse impressions. These ulat sanskaras kill the ordinary sulat or obverse impressions. Just as ordinary sulat sanskaras created through the course of experience remain after that experience comes to an end, so the ulat sanskaras created through the non-experiencing of the old sulat sanskaras persist after those sulat sanskaras have been wiped out.
Yes.
I need to read the last line again. Just as ordinary sulat sanskaras created through the course of experience remain after that experience comes to an end, so the ulat sanskaras created through the non-experiencing of the old sulat sanskaras persist after those sulat sanskaras have been wiped out.
Yeah. So here also there is a vestige left that ulat sanskaras will remain with you, but you won't accumulate any sulat samskaras. Say, as you enjoy an ice cream, you enjoy that ice cream because of the imagination of enjoyment of ice cream, which you had seen earlier or experienced earlier. So that creates another experience or want for experiencing the same ice cream later. That is the sulat samskara. Whereas in the ulat, say the emergence of that crave for ice cream comes to you, but you stop it at that level. You don't go and experience or eat the ice cream. That is the ulat samskara. So at the end, you don't get the sulat samskara later, but there will be a vestige of ulat remaining. That is the not wanting anything will always be there.
Right.
That is what is explained.
Is the last word sulat sanskaras persist, or should it be ulat sanskaras persist?
No. He is giving this. The ulat samskara created through non-experiencing of the world.
Okay.
Have been wiped out. Sulat samskaras persist for those sulat samskaras have been wiped out.
Okay.
So you are going to wipe out the sulat samskara. You don't crave for the ice cream.
Right.
But your not wanting the ice cream remains in your mind.
I understand.
So you get a impression in your mind not to experiencing anything in life. So that negative attitude comes. So gradually over a period of time, you will have no say craving for anything in life.
Right. I understood
So
what
that-
you're saying, Mamaji. Beautifully
Yes.
explained. I was just struggling with the language here, but
Yes.
thanks for explaining. Yeah. Okay, we are in time. We finished the reading today. That's all that
Yes.
I had from Karthik Bhaiya.
Okay.
So
Okay.
thank you
Hello.
for being here.
Hello, Karthik. Come back.
Yeah. I'm there, and so
Jai
is Nava,
Baba.
I think.
Jai Baba.
Baba.
Actually, just hold on for a minute. Can somebody try stop recording? Does that
How
work?
do we?
Does it allow you?
Recording is started by attending this thing. You cannot just
Only
recording.
Okay.
I don't know how to do
only
it.
the one who has given the invitation can do that, probably. Who started the invite? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Not everybody cannot do that.
I don't think I'm able to. Karthik. Maybe we
Okay, let me-
stop. It will automatically stop recording, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.